Hello and welcome to a short video from PaperHen. Today I want to talk about the basic techniques you'll need to produce 3D low poly papercraft models. The models start life as a 2D template or pattern which you print out on paper, or if your printer supports it, directly on the cardstock. As you can see, the pattern has a scale on the left side so you can check that you've printed it actual size. I'll go over the meaning of the symbols and things later in the talk. Okay. After you've cut out, glued and assembled the model, it'll turn into a 3D model. These one I put together earlier, but obviously the model you create depends on the pattern. Looking on the inside of the mask, you can see how the pattern falls into a 3D shape. You'll need the following tools and materials to complete most papercraft projects. The first thing is a decent pair of scissors for cutting the shapes out. I've shown two here, but any one will do. The first is a standard small pair with a blade length of about 3 inches. This other pair are spring loaded with a hard blade and are great for very small and detailed models, but really you don't need them when just starting out. The next thing you need is a clear plastic ruler with a good straight edge. You'll use this for scoring and folding. A standard school one is fine and it should be about 12 inches or 30 centimeters in length. If you're using liquid glue, you'll need a glue spreader which will give you a thin layer of glue. Here's a plastic one which you can get for a tiny amount of money and is well worth it. As an alternative to a glue spreader, you can use any suitable thin piece of plastic. For making score marks on the folds, you need a small blunt point of some sort. You can use the tip of an empty ballpoint pen or a blunt pair of scissors, but my favourite method is to get a paper clip and open it up to make a scoring tool. To fix the parts of the model together, you need some sort of glue. Here I've got some school PVA glue in a bottle with a narrow tip. PVA glue is my preferred way of fixing the parts together, and that's what I'll be using today. Alternatively, you can use a glue stick which dries more quickly, but on the downside doesn't give you much time to make small adjustments. Let's take a closer look at the pattern. First of all, you can see that the pattern is a bunch of 2D shapes. On each shape you'll see some solid lines and two types of dashed line, and also some numbers and symbols. I'll talk about the numbers later. These solid lines are cut lines. Uneven dash lines mean you fold the card at this point. You interpret them as either valley folds where the card is folded upwards, or hill folds where the card is folded downwards. By default they're interpreted as valley folds. Even dash lines are also fold lines, but you interpret them in the opposite way to the uneven lines. The glue symbols show a tab where you glue. You may need to glue on the surface with the symbol on or the reverse side. You've basically got two options when building the model. Either use the pattern as a template or print it directly on the card. In this part I'll talk about using the pattern as a template where it's been printed onto paper as a start. The first step is to roughly cut out the pattern shapes with the aim of laying them out on some card. You don't need to be accurate at this stage. Okay, once you've cut the shapes out and got yourself some sheet card or even recycled card like old pizza boxes, then you lay them out to make sure you have enough space. Here you want to arrange them to give a decent fit. Next, glue the back of the paper and stick them onto the card. Put some lines of glue across the paper and then use your glue spreader to create a thin layer of glue over the full surface of the shape. Lay the shape onto the card and smooth it down, sticking any ends down as you go. Continue with the other shapes until you've filled your card. Put it to one side to dry and continue on with the other remaining shapes. If your printer supports printing on heavy card, then you can buy sheets of card and print the pattern directly onto them. The benefit of this is that you can keep symmetrical parts together, since on most patterns the shapes are clustered together in the same way, but as mirror images of each other. Okay, we've now cut the parts out. These are the ones which I've previously printed directly on the card, but they could equally be the ones that I cut out from scrap card. You can see that the parts have been cut out accurately. This is important since it affects the eventual finish of the model. Scoring puts a dent into the card so that it folds more easily along the fold line. I'm going to make a score mark along each of the dashed lines. Take the clear ruler and position it just below the line, and using the scoring tool, here is my paperclip, lightly score a dent into the card. You only need light pressure to get a good mark. Move the shape around to the next line and repeat. After a few goes you'll get the hang of it. Continue with the other fold marks to complete the shape. I prefer to do all of the scoring of all the shapes before moving on to the next step. Scoring takes a while, but you get a much sharper finish. Okay, I've scored this one and will now show you how easily it'll fold. In this case I want the outside surface to be the plain card without lines, so I'm going to interpret the even dashed lines as valley folds rather than hill folds. If I was going to paint the model, then I wouldn't care that the outside surface had lines on it, so the even dashed lines would be hill folds. You can see that I'm folding the card by about 30 degrees and that it's folding easily with the scoring. Note that even and uneven lines are folded in the opposite direction. This part's done and ready for assembly. Once we've done all of our folding, we're left with a pile of parts which should be for each side of the model. Each part has edges and tabs which are numbered. The model is assembled by joining together the edge and tab which have the same number. So for instance, here's a tab which has the number 7 and an edge which has the number 17. To begin, you find the part which has the corresponding numbers, in this case an edge numbered 7 and a tab numbered 17. Before gluing, test fit the parts so that you know how they will eventually fit together. The idea is to get a feel for how best to physically hold the parts and to what angles they need to be positioned. When you glue the tab, you'll already know where things need to be. Tabs always end up on the inside surface of the model, so in this case I'm going to glue on the plain side. Get your glue and run a thin line of it along the tab. This is a little too much, but the spreader will remove the right amount. With the spreader, remove the excess glue so that you have a thin clear layer on the tab. Join the tab and edge together whilst the glue is still wet and position them so that the fold marks are exactly aligned. Sometimes it's useful to wobble the fold, which helps alignment. Pinch the join together for a few seconds to allow it to bond, then let it dry for a minute or so before using that part again. Okay, so I've glued together a few parts into sections, and as you can see I've built them symmetrically. At some point you need to join them together, and there are lots of options of where to start. Usually it's best to test fit the sections to find an edge that is going to act a bit like a pivot. Quite often that will be the flattest and topmost tab, but not always. In this case I'm going to use the top tab though. Glue as you would normally. It's a bit easier now since you've got more edges to see and that they can be aligned in 3 places. Assemble one edge at a time, allowing it to dry sufficiently before moving on to the next edge. I've put the two sections together and the mask is starting to take shape now. You can see that the tabs and numbers are on the inside, with the tabs giving the mask that bit of extra strength. That's about it for assembly. You can continue on joining shapes and sections together until you end up with the finished item. Here's my assembled mask, which is a nice low poly 3D owl face. If you want to add a bit more finesse, then there are a few things we can do. Firstly, there's some small holes where I've not been too careful about aligning the edges. I can fill these with some softened papier-mâché. There are also some small areas where excess glue has become dirty, which I can rub off with a damp cloth. And finally, I want to decorate the mask by maybe painting with acrylic paints or even spray. Here's an idea I had, but I'm sure you can do better. Thanks for watching, and I hope this helps you on your first papercraft project.